Hey everybody, we're on day 75 of our Bible in a Year series, working through the Bible in a year through the CSB Bible this year, and we'll see what we do next year. But this year is the CSB. You can follow along on our screen or with your own Bible. It doesn't even have to be the CSB. Generally speaking, you can kind of follow along with any translation. I wouldn't do the Passion or the New World Translation. But yeah, if you're reading the New World Translation, we have other issues. I'll leave it at that. We're in Judges 10 today, and we will jump straight in. Verse 1, Judges 10, verse 1. After Abimelech, Tola, son of Puah, son of Dodo, became judge and began to deliver Israel. He was from Issachar and lived in Shamir, in the hill country of Ephraim. Tola judged Israel 23 years, and when he died, was buried in Shamir. After him came Jair, the Gileadite, who judged Israel 22 years. He had 30 sons who rode on 30 donkeys. They had 30 towns in Gilead, which are still called Jair's villages today. When Jair died, he was buried in Kamon. Then the Israelites again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. They worshipped the Baals and the Ashtaroths, the gods of Aram, Sidon, and Moab, and the gods of the Ammonites and the Philistines. They abandoned the Lord and did not worship him. So the Lord's anger burned against Israel, and he sold them to the Philistines and the Ammonites. They shattered crushed the Israelites that year, and for 18 years they did the same to all the Israelites who were on the other side of the Jordan, in the land of the Amorites. In Gilead, the Ammonites also crossed the Jordan to fight against Judah, Benjamin, and the house of Ephraim. Israel was greatly oppressed, so they cried out to the Lord, saying, "We have sinned against you. We have abandoned our God and worshipped the Baals." The Lord said to the Israelites, "When the Egyptians, Amorites, Ammonites, Philistines, Sidonians, Amalekites, and Maonites oppressed you, and you cried out to me, did I not deliver you from them? But you have abandoned me and worshipped other gods. Therefore I will not deliver you again. Go and cry out to the gods you have chosen. Let them deliver you whenever you are oppressed." Yeah, that's... I'm sorry, that is a very much a parental line, right? If you have kids, I think you're going to understand. But that is very much a parental line. Go and cry out to the gods that you have chosen. Not specifically, obviously, like gods, but a parental line in the sense of, like, you know what? I told you what to do. You didn't listen to me, so just go do it. See how it goes for you. It's also a gangster line from God. So, verse 15. But the Israelites said, "We have sinned. Deal with us as you see fit. Only rescue us today." So they got rid of the foreign gods among them and worshipped the Lord, and he became weary of Israel's ministry. So notice something. They cried out. God said that. Go cry out to the gods you have chosen, and let them deliver you whenever you are oppressed. Then Israel cried out again, and at that point, they got rid of the foreign gods. So they're crying out to God while they still had the foreign gods among them. That may have been the reason for God's quote-unquote clap back, as the children say. Verse 17, the Ammonites were called together, and they camped in Gilead. So the Israelites assembled and camped at Mizpah. The rulers of Gilead said to one another, "Which man will begin the fight against the Ammonites? He will be the leader of all the inhabitants of Gilead." Jephthah, the Gileadite, was a valiant warrior, but he was the son of a prostitute, and Gilead was his father. Gilead's wife bore him sons, and when they grew up, they drove Jephthah out and said to him, "You will have no inheritance in our father's family, because you are the son of another woman." So Jephthah fled from his brothers and lived in the land of Tob. Then some worthless men joined Jephthah and went on raids with him. Sometime later, the Ammonites fought against Israel. When the Ammonites made war with Israel, the elders of Gilead went to get Jephthah from the land of Tob. They said to him, "Come, be our commander, and let's fight the Ammonites." So again, we see this idea that God is wanting to use someone that's kind of been pushed away or written off by others. By his own family, right? Verse 7, Jephthah replied to the elders of Gilead, "Didn't you hate me and drive me out of my father's family? Why then have you come to me now when you're in trouble?" They answered Jephthah, "That's true, but now we turn to you. Come fight with us, fight the Ammonites, and you will become the leader of all the inhabitants of Gilead." So Jephthah said to them, "If you are bringing me back to fight the Ammonites, and the Lord gives them to me, I will be your leader." The elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, "The Lord is our witness if we don't do as you say." So Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead. The people made him their leader and commander, and Jephthah repeated all his terms in the presence of the Lord at Mizpah. Jephthah sent messengers to the king of the Ammonites, asking, "What do you have against me that you have come to fight me in my land?" The king of the Ammonites said to Jephthah's messengers, "When Israel came from Egypt, they seized my land from the Arnon to the Jabbok, and the Jordan. Now restore it peaceably." Jephthah again sent messengers to the king of the Ammonites to tell him, "This is what Jephthah says: Israel did not take away the land of Moab or the land of the Ammonites, but when they came from Egypt, Israel traveled through the wilderness to the Red Sea and came to Kadesh." Israel sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, "Please let us travel through your land." But the king of Edom would not listen. They also sent messengers to the king of Moab, but he refused. So Israel stayed in Kadesh. Then they traveled through the wilderness and around the lands of Edom and Moab. They came to the east side of the land of Moab and camped on the other side of the Arnon, but did not enter into the territory of the Moab, for the Arnon was the boundary of Moab. Then Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, king of Heshbon. Israel said to him, "Please let us travel through your land to our community." But Sihon would not trust Israel to pass through his territory. Instead, Sihon gathered all his troops, camped at Jahaz, and fought with Israel. Then the Lord God of Israel handed over Sihon and all his troops to Israel, and they defeated them. So Israel took possession of the entire land of the Amorites who lived in that country. They took possession of all the territory of the Amorites from the Arnon to the Jabbok, and from the wilderness to the Jordan. The Lord God of Israel has now driven out the Amorites before his people, and will you now force us out? Isn't it true that you can have whatever your God Chemosh conquers for you, and we can have whatever the Lord our God conquers for us? Now are you any better than Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did he ever contend with Israel or fight against them? While Israel lived 300 years in Heshbon and Aroer, in their surrounding villages, and in all the cities that are on the banks of the Arnon, why didn't you take them back at that time? I have not sinned against you, but you are doing me wrong by fighting against me. Let the Lord, who is the judge, decide today between the Israelites and the Ammonites. But the king of the Ammonites would not listen to Jephthah's message that he sent him. The Spirit of the Lord came on Jephthah, who traveled through Gilead and Manasseh, and then through Mizpah of Gilead. He crossed over to the Ammonites from Mizpah of Gilead. Jephthah made this vow to the Lord: "If you, in fact, hand over the Ammonites to me..." Okay, it gets kind of weird. I think it seems a lot stranger at first, but I'm going to explain kind of how I think this is actually plays out. So Jephthah made this vow to the Lord: if you hand over the Ammonites to me, whoever comes out the doors of my house to greet me when I return safely from the Ammonites will belong to the Lord, and I will offer that person as a burnt offering. Jephthah crossed over to the Ammonites. So, sorry, why would you say whoever comes out, right? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Why would you say that you're going to offer someone as a burnt offering? Jephthah crossed over the Ammonites to fight against them, and the Lord handed them over to him. He defeated 20 of their cities with a great slaughter from Aroer all the way to the entrance of Minnith and to Abel Kiramim. So the Ammonites were subdued before the Israelites. When Jephthah went to his home in Mizpah, there was his daughter coming out to meet him with tambourines and dancing. She was his only child. He had no other son or daughter besides her. When he saw her, he tore his clothes and said, "No, not my daughter. You have devastated me. You have brought great misery on me. I have given my word to the Lord and cannot take it back." Then she said to him, we're gonna touch on this. Then she said to him, "My father, you have given your word to the Lord. Do to me as you have said. For the Lord brought vengeance on your enemies, the Ammonites." She also said to her father, "Let me do this one thing. Let me wander 2 months through the mountains with my friends and mourn my virginity." Okay? Verse 38. We'll finish out the chapter and then we'll talk about this. "Go," he said, and he sent her away for 2 months. So she left with her friends and mourned her virginity as she wandered through the mountains. At the end of the 2 months, she returned to her father, and he kept the vow he had made about her. And she had never been intimate with a man. Now it became a custom in Israel that 4 days each year the young woman of Israel would commemorate the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadite. So, at first reading, a lot of people see this and say, "Oh, well, he sacrificed his daughter as a burnt offering," because it does say a burnt offering. Now, I will say, I'm not sure on the original word there. I believe the word that we translate to burnt offering there can be translated to just sacrifice or just offering as well. I might be wrong on that, but even if I'm wrong on that, I don't think it really matters. So a couple of context clues. She specifically, why is she going to mourn her virginity and not her life? Right? Like, that seems strange. You would think that the life would be a bigger deal, but she's not. She's going to mourn virginity. Also, keep in mind the fact that Israel was explicitly told not to sacrifice their kids. So, I don't think this was actually a physical sacrifice, and I think the reading the text kind of illustrates this too. Specifically with knowing the nature of God, that he is not in favor of child sacrifice, and then specifically that she mentions that she is mourning her virginity. I think what has actually happened here is that his daughter had been given to the the priesthood to kind of be in service of the temple. Now, I'm not going to go into a ton of detail here. There is some stuff to this, but essentially, it would be kind of a vow of celibacy almost. And she was gone. She was out of his life. So I think that makes more sense with what we see in the text, but also with what we know of the nature of God. God would not approve of sacrificing your child. And I think Jephthah would know this isn't something that God would approve of. Even if he did make this vow, okay, find something else to sacrifice. God would not approve of him sacrificing his daughter. That makes no sense. So that's kind of the reading there. Chapter 12. The men of Ephraim were called together and crossed the Jordan to Zaphon. They said to Jephthah, "Why have you crossed over to fight against the Ammonites, but didn't call us to go with you? We will burn your house with you in it." Then Jephthah said to them, "My people and I had a bitter conflict with the Ammonites, so I called for you, but you didn't deliver me from their power. When I saw that you weren't going to deliver me, I took my life in my own hands and crossed over to the Ammonites, and the Lord handed them over to me. Why then have you come today to fight against me?" Then Jephthah gathered all the men of Gilead. They fought and defeated Ephraim, because Ephraim had said, "You Gileadites are Ephraimite fugitives in the territories of Ephraim and Manasseh." The Gileadites, captured the fords of the Jordan leading to Ephraim. Whenever a fugitive from Ephraim said, "Let me cross over," the Gileadites asked him, "Are you an Ephraimite?" If he answered no, they told him, "Please say Shibboleth." If he said Shibboleth, because he could not pronounce it correctly, neither could I, they seized him and executed him at the fords of the Jordan. At that time, 42,000 from Ephraim died. So I would be one of them that died, because I can't pronounce it correctly, I'm sure. Jephthah judged Israel 6 years, and when he died, he was buried in one of the cities of Gilead. Ibzan, who was from Bethlehem, judged Israel after Jephthah, and had 30 sons. He gave his 30 daughters in marriage to men outside the tribe, and brought back 30 wives for his sons from outside the tribe. Ibzan judged Israel 7 years, and when he died, he was buried in Bethlehem. Elon, who was from Zebulun, judged Israel after Ibzan. He judged Israel 10 years, and when he died, he was buried in Ajalon in the land of Zebulun. After Elon, Abdon, son of Heliel, who was from Pirathon, judged Israel. He had 40 sons and 30 grandsons who rode on 7 donkeys. Abdon judged Israel 8 years, and when he died, he was buried in Pirathon in the land of Ephraim in the hill country of the Amalekites. Alrighty. So, reading done. It's a kind of a stranger one, but it's really, I think once you get the context of it, it makes more sense. Let me know in the comments if you think I'm completely off base, or if you think it makes sense. But while you do, I'm going to go over the questions, and you can answer these questions in the comments as well. Question 1. In Judges 10, Israel cries out to God, but he finally rebukes them. What does this exchange reveal about the balance between repentance and God's patience? I think this has a lot to do with the idols that were still there. Because we see once they get rid of the idols, God switches his stance, right? I think this is also understanding. It comes to mind the New Testament, where Paul talks about giving our brothers over to giving them over to their sin, giving them over to Satan. And now the purpose of that is that they eventually come back into fellowship again. But it's kind of if they're not willing to change or even consider changing, kick them out the door, and they'll have to learn the hard way, essentially. So that's kind of one way that I see this as well. Question 2. Jephthah's vow in chapter 11 leads to a heartbreaking outcome. How can we be more mindful of the promises that we make in moments of desperation? So, like we said, I don't think it's still not like great. Like she's sacrificing that. making a sacrifice. He's getting rid of his daughter, and she's going to servitude. So it's still sacrifice, but it's not quite the heartbreaking sacrifice that I think a lot of people assume. Now, I think we should be mindful of what we promise. We need to, if we make promises, and this is both with God and with man. If we make promises, we need to stick to it. Let your yes be yes. Let your yes be yes. Let your no be a no. I can't talk. But be someone of your word. Stick to what you say you're going to stick to. If you promise something, follow it through. Don't promise things that you can't or don't want to go without. Question 3. Despite Jephthah's flaws and outsider status, God uses him to deliver Israel. How does this encourage us to see potential in imperfect people, including ourselves? I think this kind of goes to the idea that God can use whoever he wants, and he will use whoever he wants. And many times who he uses is someone that it makes no sense to us whatsoever, right? At all. So don't question when God moves. Don't question the person that God's moving through. That's not it for that person. Trust that God is moving and doing things, and he can use who he wants to use for those purposes. So that is it for today. Appreciate everyone watching and listening up to this point. If you're still here, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I always enjoy reading comments on the videos and commenting back as long as I can. So you can answer the questions there. Word of mouth is still the best way podcast spread. So if this podcast has been a blessing to you, if it's not, don't worry about it. But if this has been a blessing to you, consider sharing it with other people, and maybe it can be a blessing to them as well. Our purpose with this series, we're wanting to increase people that are reading the Bible every single day by giving them someone that they can read along with, in hopes that would help them stick with that habit. So appreciate that. Tomorrow we're going to be getting back into Judges again. It's going to be Judges 13 through 15. So the interesting stuff, good stuff. Ready for it. And until then, God bless.